Hey guys, it's Joe from GGD and welcome to a mixing tutorial I have made. It's focusing on the Benny Greb Signature Pack, and I endeavored to try and make it sound, I've called it like modern funk in the title, but more specifically I'd say it's kind of going for that Louis Cole sound, so like modern jazz funk, fusion. I don't know. It's kind of an odd genre, but I love the way he gets his drums sounding. So I really want to try and recreate that with the Benny Greb pack. And I think I've got it pretty close. So let's just take a listen. I've got two little examples for you here. One is a more funky thing. And then for this, I just wanted to see what it would sound like in a kind of more drum and bassy context. It's just the drums on the second part. But let's listen to this funk section first. So I think that's sounding pretty cool. It's pretty dry and in your face, and in certain ways almost sounding a little artificial, but certainly punchy, dry, quite mid-low focused, and really just sort of, it smacks you around the face a bit, which I really love the sound of. And here it is playing some sort of drum and bass drumming, which I thought it sounded really cool actually for this. Alright, so let's dive into it. So loading up the mixer. There's certainly stuff going on, but not, loads and loads and loads. I got pretty far just in the levels within Kontakt, so let's start there. So I'll just click through the individual kit pieces so you can kind of hear how they sound in isolation. So kit piece selection wise, we're using the high and dry snare, and then we're using the standard 10x8 and 16x16. Yeah, so not the jazz tuning. And then on the kick, we're using the vintage 20x14 kick with a towel, just to have that really short sustain. So I have taken off all the processing on the mixing channels in Logic, and we're going to take a look at the sends in the kit tabs and have a listen to what that sounds like. So this is the kick page. I'm not using turbo or reverb on any of the drums or the cymbals, I believe. Yeah, so no turbo or reverb going on here. This is what the kick sounds like soloed. So it's nice and short and snappy. Let's bring in the rooms, the dirts and the overheads. So as you can hear, it's nice and dry and short and in your face. Got lots of lovely mids, and it's getting a bit of that room ambience just to make it sit in a space nicely. Something to note is I've pulled the Glyn Johns mic completely down on all these. It just wasn't the sound I wanted for this. Moving on to snare, let's hear what this sounds like. So I've got the snare top and bottom and overhead close far, room, mono and dirt soloed for this. So we're already sounding really, really good. And that's completely raw, just with setting levels on these mics. You can see I have also adjusted the envelope of the snare top and snare bottom. So let's take a listen to what that sounds like. I'll do this in solo. So this will be on snare top. I'll leave the envelope on and then bypass it so it takes off the adjustments I've made. So here it's really just affecting the kind of ringy overtones of the snare. I just wanted to almost make it sound like it's got a bit of moon gel on, which is something I think you can achieve really well using these envelope controls. Listening on snare bottom. Again, just chopping off that last kind of rizzle on the snare. Want to make it sound a bit more controlled, a bit tighter. And all together. Sounding nice and big in your face, nice and present, but not too ringy, and nice and controlled. Side snare, I'm pretty sure I changed nothing. That's engaged for some reason, but it's doing absolutely nothing. Now toms. Again, we've got the envelope adjustments here doing some bits. Looks like we are taking down the sustain again. So let's just listen to that in solo. So at this tempo, we can hear that the ring of that rack tom almost goes on for 2 quarter notes. So I just wanted to adjust that to be shorter. And the same will apply to the floor tom. Again, aiming for that close, tight, dry sound. Not loads feeding into the rooms and the monos and the dirt mics. As I've said a million times by now, aiming for that close, dry sound. So this is the levels we've got going on in the cymbals. I haven't adjusted the pan at all, I don't believe. I try and always get away with as little of the close mics as possible, and then just bring them up if needed to get a bit more of the stick definition, because sometimes they can sound a little washy without it. So I can just solo all of this for you so we can hear how it's sounding. Perhaps better displaying this on the drum and bass bit. So not super roomy, quite a direct overhead sound, which feeds into that dry punchiness. And let's just listen to what all those levels combine into as a completely dry, unprocessed sound. So we're already sounding really nice. I'm really just amazed by how great this kit sounds, completely natural in that with just some level adjustments. It's sounding great. But we want it to now sound a bit more processed, because something that's really cool about Louis' drum mixes is that there's an element of them that almost sounds electronic. And so that was something I really wanted to try and get in this. So let's take a look at the kick. I've summed the kick mics out to this channel, and we know what it sounds like. So what have we got going here? We've got an EQ into a compressor, into a gate, into some saturation, and a little bit of more EQ. I'm going to put my headphones on so I can actually hear what's going on properly. So let's just A/B this EQ for you guys. So we're just boosting some of the presence here. You can see it's pretty drastic because it's quite a, there's not a lot of like click to this kick. So I wanted to really boost this up. We're going, 9.5 dB. So we've essentially made like a high shelf with a little bit of a bump where it starts to roll off. We're cutting some of the mids at around 600, just a bit of paperiness, I imagine. And then we've got this boxiness. This is following something Nolly taught me and he's talked about in the videos, is like often you get two sort of fundamentals, it looks like, in the low end of drums, and if you take the second, it'll help clean up the tone of the drum considerably. So I'll show you what that does here. Really helps clean up that low mids to the low end and just make it sound a lot more polished. Moving on to the compressor for this, we've got smash and grab, of course. We've got it on smash. Pulling about 3 dB or so. So what's that? It's like 17.4 as the threshold. We're not doing any beef. We're not doing any air. We're not doing any saturation. We're just compressing here. Pretty subtle, just helping round out some of the velocities a bit and make it sound a little bit more sort of uniform. Now we've got a gate. Not something people always lean to with sampled drums, because obviously you can, in our libraries, you can control the bleed, so you don't need a gate for bleed. But I wanted to further control the sustain here, and something I've noticed a fair amount when I mix programmed drums is that using gates often makes them sound more natural and more like a live drum mix, because obviously when you mix live drums, you use gates. So it makes sense to also use them when doing programmed drums, because the way the gate affects the sort of sustain and envelope of the close mics will be copied across onto the programmed drums. So it helps get a bit closer to the kind of completely natural mix sound, I think. But I'll show you what it's doing here. So it's quite subtle, but again, we're controlling that sustain and bringing some of the boxiness in the sustain down. Making it super punchy there. And then finally, we've got virtual mix rack. So here we've got what is essentially like a transient control mix with a saturation thing. I don't actually know what it's fully doing, but I like how it sounds. Going by ear, you know, I'm not overthinking it. And then just going into an EQ, which is boosting some low end and some high end. So we can A/B this. So really, like, you can really hear the punchiness that is bringing to this mix. And I'll just do it without the EQ engaged so we can hear what this bomber is doing. Just really bringing that punchiness in. I love how that sounds. And then with the EQ. Obviously introducing a bit of volume there, which I haven't accounted for. So, but yeah, just using this SSL to really boost some high end and some lows. 60 hertz for the lows and around 7.5 kilohertz for the highs. So that's the kick. Let's move on to the snare top. We're already sounding real nice. So we've not got loads going on here on the EQ, just rolling off the low end because we don't need that. There's quite a lot of stick definition, and I wanted to just tame that slightly with this high shelf, bringing it down. So kind of similar to where we boosted on the kick, we're just bringing it down slightly on the snare. And then we've got some ringing here, which I would have handled just pulling it down. A considerable amount, but quite a narrow cube, but not too narrow that it sounds unnatural. Let's just A/B this individual band. So that's what I'm pulling out. Hopefully you can hear that there. Just something I wasn't a big fan of that I was just sorting out a bit. Now we've got two instances of smash and grab, one in grab and one in smash. The grab is first, just to help emphasize and make some a bit more attack, basically. With you can see I've boosted some air and I've also added some saturation here. So let's hear what that is doing. So altogether, just kind of gluing the sound of the snare together a bit more. I really love what that's doing. And then into grab, no B4 air or saturation, also on snare mode, obviously. And this will just be helping to kind of tame some of those transients, because there's a couple that kind of stick out a bit. So we're just taming some of those. See there, it's not activating on every hit, just because of the way the rim shot's being played there. But yeah, just helping control some of them to make it sound a bit more even. Then we have Saturn, and I believe this is the default settings. I just put up the drive a bit because I wanted, this kind of helps make it, well, obviously it makes it sound driven, which in my head was achieving some of that kind of electronic sound and just to make it sound even like snappier and punchier. I really love what that does to it. I think it really helps get me that final 10%. And then again, we're going into a gate with similar settings here to do a similar thing with that I did with the kick. So that's got quite a drastic difference, very much cutting off some of the sustain of the drum. On snare bottom, we haven't got loads going on here, just an EQ and a compressor. Considerably more going on the EQ here. So I'll just A/B it and then we can talk through what's going on. So really sort of aiming at the boxiness and paperiness of this. I wanted it to sound, it's quite like a trashy snare bottom mic, which obviously works really well for Benny's sound, but I wanted to kind of craft it into something a bit cleaner. So we've got a high pass all the way up at 222 hertz, which is higher than I would normally set, but I just really wanted it to be like the sizzle of the snares for this. You can hear it really pokes out when that's not handled there. And then this will be the kind of papery, cardboardy region. Kind of a pock almost. It's really helping just taming that slightly. And then we've just got our high shelf boosting some highs to get some extra sizzle out of the snares. Into snare, smash and grab, on grab again. We're boosting a little bit of air and we've got loads of saturation going on here. Let's check out what this does. So it's almost like somehow bringing out the rattle is what I'm hearing. You can really hear on the transient of that, the like... Really love what that does. So let's move on to the rack tom. I'll show you what it sounds like processed and then raw. And raw. So I've panned them a little bit further left, and I'm doing something here which is kind of interesting actually. I'm using this frequency shifter from Kilohertz to just bring the tuning down a bit. It's very subtle. I'm only bringing it down 5 hertz, so it, as I said, very subtle. But it shifts everything down together in a really pleasing way to alter the tuning slightly. And I'm only doing it a little bit just because I wanted it to be a bit punchy. I probably would have tried to do a bit more, but I found it started to fall apart. So let's just hear what that does. So just bring it down. I don't want to do it so much that you start hearing the discrepancy of the tunings in the room mics and stuff, because that will happen. So just doing it enough where I think I can get away with it. So pretty standard tom EQ. We can see we're boosting some of the fundamental here. We've got a high pass around 100 hertz, and then just sorting out some of the mid-range. Very standard stuff. So reasonably subtle here. As you can see, like these are like -2, -3 dB, so not loads going on. I really love the fundamental tone and note of these toms, so I don't want to mess with it too much, and I'm even boosting that the fundamental note there, because I feel like you can really, I don't know, I feel like it really helps you kind of picture what this drum looks like when it's hit, and I like that. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but there it is. So on toms, we've got it on grab mode. You can see here I am doing a little bit of anti-beef and pro air. And we've got some saturation on. We've actually got it on snare mode here. I must have liked how that sounded. I can't remember why I chose that, unfortunately. I mixed this a while ago, by the way, so we're dropping into it. But let's listen to what this does. It's just a bit more aggressive on snare mode, I guess. I really like how that sounds, though. Helping tame the transient, because this smashes, like, it really smashes the transients. So it's just sort of making it sound a bit more level, which I really enjoy for this. Then we've got FabFilter Saturn again. Again, just on that clean. I've changed it from warm to clean for this, but then I've got no bands going on. I think I'm just building up the drive here. So a very clean saturation here. I just like the way it sort of conglomerates the sound together. And then again, we've got a gate. Again, just cutting off some of the sustain, making it sound a bit punchier. Moving on to floor tom. So obviously Benny is well known for his floor tom sound, so I'm so stoked we got to capture that in this. I really want it to sound almost like kick-like, so I went pretty crazy on the EQ here. You can hear I'm really cutting out a lot of that sort of cardboardy mid-range and low mids stuff. I want it to, as I said, it's almost got like an 808 character. Trying to sort of shift into that electronic sound a bit. I think that sounds really great. So you can see the bands I've got here: 156, 283, 533, and 1576 hertz. Creating this nice big valley, and again boosting the fundamental a bit because I wanted that sort of low thump to come through. Then we're on smash and grab, again in snare mode. I was smashing through this, it seems. Yeah, I really like how that sounds in snare mode. It's almost a bit more aggressive and electronic sounding, which is exactly what I wanted for this. And then again, FabFilter Saturn on the clean tube. I probably just copied this over, to be honest. Yeah, it's the exact same setting here. Let's just A/B what that does on the floor. Haven't got a gate on this one. The envelope controls I did within Kontakt were enough for me here. It's already got quite a short sustain for a floor tom, very punchy. So I didn't need to do any more gating on that. Now on the hi-hat, we've got absolutely nothing. On the ride, we've got absolutely nothing. I think what I probably did here was I just like opened up the session, got everything routed, and then just put an EQ on everything. So I found that some elements didn't actually need anything. Benny's cymbals are the Meinl sand ride and hi-hats. I've actually got a sand ride myself, and we don't talk about the playing because they're incredibly satisfying to play, but they sound amazing. They, I don't know, it sounds like they've been like nestled in sand for ages. They've just got such a pleasing warmth and lack of harsh overtones that they I mean, they sound incredible in person, but to record, I found them to be amazing also, and you're hearing that in this. I know Matt used to use, I think, the 22-inch Sand with Periphery for a bit, long before his signature crash ride. But let's see what we've got going on the overheads. So a very, very small amount here. As I was saying, these cymbals record incredibly well. Just getting rid of some of the kick sub. You can hear there's quite a lot of snare in that, which is a sound I really love on this snare drum. It's got a really nice attack. So due to that, I did want to compress it. So let's see what this compressor is doing. So you can see there it's just cutting the snare a bit. There is a boost in volume, but obviously like how it sounded. So this is the room close mic. I'll A/B this. So keeping in the lows, I didn't want to cut them out completely, but we have got a high pass at 66, but with, as you can see, not a very steep cutoff. Handling some of the low mids at 170 hertz. You can hear it's quite tubby. Then at 470. That cardboard, 1K. The paperiness, and then at 2K, that kind of high, mid, trashy dustbin lid sound. So just balancing it out to all in all create a more pleasant sound. Cleaner and a bit less trashy sounding. We've got Smash on room mode. So you can see it's really activating on the snare there, just helping bring everything and sound a bit closer. And then we've got Far Room, EQ. A bit of a steeper one here, trying to cut off the lows a bit more. But overall doing a similar thing to the EQ on the previous one, handling the same problem areas. And then again, we have Smash and Grab on the room far, on room mode. No saturation, no air, no beef. Just handling a similar situation and bringing a bit of explosiveness, I imagine. So pulling healthy amounts here, -10. But you can hear that because it's quite like a dry room, it's not necessarily bringing out loads of ambience. It's just helping control it and making it gel together in a really pleasing way with the rest of the kit. Helps bring out the sustain of the drums too. And you can see I've actually pulled that back by 5.5 dB on the channel itself. We've got nothing going on mono, but you can see I've pulled it back by 10.6. Then on the dirt channel, getting rid of some sort of low mids here. That low boxiness. And then I've got a gain on here, just plussing it up 6 to get a bit more volume out of it. So that's all the processing on the drums. I should say, actually, we have got some one-shot samples blended in, but I'll get to that after I talk. Actually, no, let's do that now. So these one-shots are from our Slammers Power Vault collection, which you can get on the website. For the snare, what I've done is I've loaded up Trigger as a MIDI instrument. If you didn't know you could do that, you can. And I just copied all the accent hits of the snare over onto this track. So I'm not triggering any on the ghost notes, just the main accents. You can see here I've got 3 samples loaded up. So let's just hear what those are sounding like blended together. We've got Slack Beauty close, so we've got quite a thuddy, duffy snare drum mixed with a tighter, ringier one, Tight Squink. Two quite opposing ideas, but that's kind of the wonder of one-shots. You can kind of do stuff which you can't do naturally with a snare drum. We've got a low, duffy, quite choked snare drum with a higher, ringier one. And that just creates a really interesting sound for this, which kind of leans into that electronic stuff I've been talking about earlier. I have no idea if Louis does this. He probably doesn't because he's a wizard. But this got me closer to the sound I was going for. And then we've got some ambience, just to give a bit of ambience. You can see I've pulled this one down here. I'll bring this into the entire drum mix and mute it, and so you can hear what it's doing. So it's subtle, but it's just helping reinforce the kind of sonic character I want from the snare. I've got no extra processing on that either. And we're doing the same with the kick, same idea. I copied it over onto a MIDI track using Slate Trigger. And we've just got a single sample here, thick, thud, close. So I'll A-B that for you. So probably even more subtle with that, but just helping bring some, as the name suggests, thickness and thuddiness, which I really liked. So that's everything going on the drum channels and the one-shot channels. This is all going into my drum bus, which I haven't named, into Cradle Orion, which is a drum bus plugin. This thing is amazing. Misha talked about it in his recent video that he did on his new metal mix walkthrough. I adore this thing. I never really knew what to do with drum buses. So when Cradle brought this out, I was super stoked to try it, and it just sounds fantastic. You can see we've got different stages here: color, harmonics, compression, lift, an EQ section, and then this parallel section where you can adjust the sub, the low, the loud, and the grit. So I'll A-B that for you and show you what that brings to the drum sound, which is a considerable amount. I'll start with it off. So, it's doing a lot. It's basically everything you'd want your drum bus to do. Sort of bring the sound together, make it glue better. But that is it, everybody. I love this library. I think it's such an interesting and unique flavor in our lineup. And it's actually so versatile. If you go back to the playthrough I did for this library, I was kind of doing like a carnival thing, and I adore how it sounds. The cymbals especially just slot into the mix in such a pleasing way to me. But that's it. That's the video. That's the mix. I would love to know what you guys think, and if you make anything with a similar kind of style, or indeed if you copy it digit for digit, which you're more than welcome to, obviously, I would love to hear it. So please make sure to leave your renditions in the comments. I hope you liked it and found it useful. I hope I didn't blabber too much, and we will see you next time.